Okay, thank you.
I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Lincoln Lancaster County Planning Commission of July 9th, 2025. A printed agenda is available outside the hearing room, and a copy of the full agenda, including the staff reports, are available online or at the Planning Department, room 213. The Open Meetings Act is posted just inside the doors at the back of the room. Out of courtesy for those attending this meeting, commissioners, and the staff, cell phones may not be used in the chamber during this portion of the meeting. We appreciate your cooperation. Please note, the Planning Commission's actions today are final on the following items. Item 1.2, Special Permit 13048C, and Item 4.1, Special Permit 1423M. Any aggrieved person may appeal final action of the Planning Commission to the City Council or to the County Board by filing a notice of appeal with the clerk within 14 days following the action of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission action on all other items is a recommendation to the City Council or the County Board. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held June 25th, 2025.
So moved, Campbell.
Second, Edens.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Minutes approved.
We will now proceed with today's agenda. The next item of business is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda will be called at the same time and will not be scheduled for a separate public hearing unless there is a request from someone wishing to speak or at the request of a commission member. I will now ask Shelley to read all the consent agenda items into the record. Once those items are read, she will ask if there is anyone wishing to speak. If you wish to speak on an item on the consent agenda, we would ask that you stand and state that item. That item will then be removed from the consent agenda and scheduled as a separate public hearing under Section 3 of today's agenda. All items remaining on the consent agenda will be voted upon in total with a motion for approval. Shelley, will you please call the items on the consent agenda?
Item 1.1, Comprehensive Plan Conformance 25006, to review as to conformance with the 2050 Lincoln Lancaster County Comprehensive Plan and amendment to the Greater Downtown Principal Corridors Redevelopment Project within the Lincoln Center Redevelopment Plan, Antelope Valley Redevelopment Plan, and North 27th Street Corridor Redevelopment Plan to identify the removal of a project from the project area for the purpose of creating a separate project district to extend the length of the tax increment funding period from 15 to 20 years, an estimated amount of tax increment funding available to complete the project, and update the cost-benefit analysis generally located at N to P Street from 9th to 28th and 9th to 10th Streets from K to S Streets. Item 1.2, Special Permit 13048C, for historic preservation to increase the occupancy at Connecting Links Transitional Living at the Little Atwood House local landmark, generally located at 740 South 17th Street, and this is final action. Item 1.3, change of zone 07018B, an amendment to revise the commercial site plan of the Glen Oaks Plaza planned unit development and change portions of blocks 1 and 2 from residential to commercial use on property generally located at South 84th Street and Glen Oaks Drive. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on these items?
There are none.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting these sites to be disclosed?
There are none.
If there is anyone here wishing to speak on these consent agenda items, please stand and state that item.
Okay.
Seeing none, I would move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second, Edens.
Shelley?
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Consent agenda approved 6-0.
Thank you. There are no requests for deferral, so we will now proceed to public hearings. Prior to staff making a brief presentation, each staff person should state their name, agency, and address. The applicant will then be requested to present his or her testimony, followed by those who wish to testify in support, followed by those who wish to testify in opposition. The staff then will be given an opportunity to respond to the testimony, and then the applicant shall have an opportunity for rebuttal. If during your testimony you have copies of documents or materials you would like to distribute to the Planning Commission members or include them as part of the record, please provide them to the clerk. Each person testifying should state their name and address and shall have 5 minutes to speak unless time is requested and granted. The clerk will use the light system to help aid your timing for your testimony. The lights will appear on the monitors provided. The clerk will indicate when you have 1 minute remaining to wrap up your testimony. The red light indicates that your 5 minutes has expired. Once that final minute has lapsed, the clerk will indicate that your time is up. The Planning Commission will vote immediately at the close of the public hearing unless the Commission votes to defer action or continue the public hearing. Shelley, would you please call the first public hearing item?
Yes, item 4.1, which is continue public hearing and administrative action for special permit 1423M, an amendment to the existing special permit for Highmark Estates Community Unit Plan to add 9 lots on property generally located at South 89th Street and Highmark Lane. This is final action. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on this application?
No, there are not.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting any of this site to be disclosed?
No, there are not.
Okay. Good afternoon. Jacob Schlange, Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street. Just as a refresher, this is an amendment to the special permit that would add 9 new lots, 4 along Highmark Lane and 5 along South 89th Street. In the 4 weeks since I was last here talking to you about this, the applicant has submitted a grading and drainage plan as requested. They did work with watershed management both prior to and in the process of submitting that grading and drainage plan. The biggest update that I have to share that was included as an amendment to the staff report is that there has been a condition added that prior to final plat, the applicant would need to submit a grading certificate showing that the grading and drainage plan has been executed appropriately. So that's the biggest change here.
Okay, any questions? Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. Tim Gergen, Clark and Anderson, 1010 Lincoln Mall. Happy July.
Happy July.
Yes, Jacob is correct. We have worked with Watershed Department. Within a week, we were collaborating with Watershed on our grading and drainage plans. We found a great solution. Tim Zox here with Watershed. He can answer any other questions you may have, but I will kind of update the site plan and our grading plan to kind of discuss that with the group. So I like Jacob saying this was our plan before. Getting some neighbor input, I think some consensus on the space in between these new lots and the existing townhomes has been a little bit laborious. And so we've been able to get some communication from some townhome owners and some from the others, but this is our new site plan that we're showing. What we're showing is the cart paths are still shown, but the ones that we are promising to make sure they are paved are the ones shown in black. Probably the big difference that you're going to see here is we had 3 chip and putt proposed holes. There were some owners off of Lamley Circle here. They were concerned about the maintenance of that and really the non-usage of that. So we've removed that. We've removed the chip and putt in this direction area as well to help alleviate any drainage concerns as well with frequent irrigating of a green. So we've just narrowed it down to 1 chip and putt area right here for the use of those neighbors. We didn't get any clear consensus whether they wanted all 3 or none, so we just arrived at 1 that I think is the best suited for the project on that end. Here's the a grading and drainage plan that we worked with on the city of Lincoln and watershed. Essentially, what we're taking is all of the lots, all the proposed lots are going to be graded, so the backyard all drains all the way to the front yard, to the street. So no runoff from these lots will be graded to the backyard or towards the townhomes. Everything will be graded to the street. It'll drain into the street, go into a storm sewer inlet, and then go into our detention pond located here. And then the detention pond drains to the east, away from the townhomes. So essentially what we're doing is we're not alleviating any of the existing drainage problems on the townhomes. They do have a drainage issue. I know that for just looking at the grading along their backyards, but we're not going to contribute any additional worsening to the problem. All that lots are going to be graded to the street and away from the townhomes. The additional condition that Jacob discussed is logical, and we agree with that. So what a grading certificate means is we have a grading plan, we issue it to a contractor, then we as the engineer will certify it that yes, it has indeed been built per the agreed upon plan as part of this condition, that everything drains away from there. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Tim,
Yes.
it's very difficult to see on the grading up in the detention cell that you're showing now. What are those elevations at that point?
Good question.
So each line represents a 1 foot contour.
Yeah,
And
but I'm sorry, but it's lifted up just a little bit.
Keep going, yep.
There you go. But the, 1568 to 65 to 61, so you're cutting that whole hill down.
yeah, what's, I don't know if you've been there, Dick, there's a kind of a wall right here that holds up this area. And so we're removing this wall in front of the right of way and then cutting this all down so then it all drains
Yeah.
this way. And yes, there's going to be a little cut bank here to ensure that no water is actually getting backed into that grading way.
So when it gets to, then you're done, once it's at the detention cell,
Yeah, so that,
then does it drain to the street?
yeah, so all these lots are going to drain to the street. Street is
Yeah,
this direction. It goes into a pair of inlets here at a low point. Then it drains into this detention cell.
can you lift it up now a little bit?
Pushing
There
it.
you
There you
go.
go.
Thank you.
Yep, you're good.
And then the detention cell piping has got a pipe here and it goes.
So does it go into the street then?
At the detention cell, no, it goes through the golf course. It kind of goes through and goes out to the,
And lift it up, are there homes right along there?
there are homes along here, but it discharges back in this
Got
direction.
it.
And then goes through the golf course.
Okay, thanks.
So that's a drainage way right through there.
Correct, a drainage way and a cart path.
That from the street.
Is the rest of that path already paved?
There are parts of the path that are paved and some of are a rock aggregate path. So there's a combination of a lot of that at Newmark.
But your part then would now be paved?
Right. This part for sure we'd be paved. And then the rest of them, we want to reserve the right to keep it flexible.
Yeah, and it's gravel at this point in those areas?
So it would be gravel or paved, Dick. We just want to keep that flexibility.
Yeah, oh, got it, okay.
Okay. Anyone else? Questions for the applicant?
Great.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll be looking for testimony in support. Testimony in a neutral position? Testimony in opposition? Come on up and state your name and address, please.
Good afternoon. My name's Jerry Elfreen. I live at 4901 Glen Eagle Court, Lincoln, Nebraska. I am the association president for Highmark Estates Townhomes, Inc. this thing is moving at a rapid speed, and although the watershed management has had this for maybe a week, we did not get notice until June 25th on your website, and that plan on your website is not visible. It does not show the grade levels. So I called Tim Zach for a meeting, and Tim had just happened to be on vacation, and we were not able to get together until July 2nd. We invited Tim out to our area to review our drainage area and issues, and he brought the plan along, which showed the elevations. And quite frankly, we can't see how this is going to work. The elevation that shows on the 4 new lots is at the same elevation that our lot is, and the townhomes that back up at 1370. And there's going to be, Tim says there's going to be a cut down of 4 feet, and I don't think 4 feet's going to do it to get those lots to slope to the front to run off of High Mark Lane. I just don't, I can't visualize it. And then my other partner, who's not here quite yet, but has the same feeling. So we met through the suggestion of the planning department. We met with the owners and expressed our concerns with them and asked for concessions. We this was just last July 3rd. I sent them a document on July 6th, and they were to have a meeting on July 7th, the night, and to date we have not seen that document signed yet, which I can show you if you're interested. I got this the right way.
Go ahead and
Put around.
reverse that. There you go.
So those are kind of our concessions we'd like to see. So the one is part of it too. There's about 12 items on here. And one of them was the condition of doing the paving the cart paths. Also deeding over part of the outlet that remains that from the putting green that they took away anyway, the chip and putt. So we feel like we've, you know, tried to be good neighbors in this and come up with a solution that is favorable for all. But we're feel like this should be suspended until this grading issue is resolved. It just doesn't appear like, you know, you can have a drainage plan until this grading issue gets to the point where it passes the inspection and the certificate is issued. I might ask, how is this certificate determined? I know that the owner will have somebody come in and do the grading, but who actually comes back and does the survey once the contractor is done? Because I had an experience with the watershed department last year, about a year ago this time, and it did not go well. And you get contractors in there that build homes, they do not follow the drainage plan. And it seems like there's no recourse to go back to whose fault it was. You know, we've got no support from the watershed department on that, and we ended up having to, between us and our neighbors, try to fix it. So I don't want that situation again. So if maybe somebody could address that as far as how that process works to get that to that point, to the draining certificate.
Sir, can
We'll
you,
ask that question
you
from staff.
push up that the first page? It stops at 6, and I wanted to see 7 through 9.
Oh, good job. That's good. Good catch.
How's that?
Thank you. Thank
Have
you.
a chance? Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, and we'll ask those questions of staff and,
Would like to conclude, we thank the planning department for getting involved in this and trying to help us here. The watershed department, they've been good to work with. Tim's been good. And the owners, we're trying to get this thing to set right with everybody.
okay, thank you very much.
Jerry, can I have that as a,
You may.
thank you.
Okay. Any other testimony in opposition? Okay, let's start with staff questions. Who wants to start?
Well, I think
Go
there's
ahead.
somebody here from Watershed Management also.
Tim is,
Excellent.
Between the two of you, would you answer his question?
I'll let
Yes.
Tim take that.
Tim Zock with LT Watershed Management, 555 South 10th Street. So with the development, once they have an approved grading and drainage plan, then they can go grade the property per that plan. With most developments, they have to construct improvements, so paving, the roadway, water, sewer, and storm. Before they can get plans authorized by the city to make those improvements, they need to submit a grading certificate to the city. That grading certificate must be submitted by a licensed surveyor or licensed engineer, and that says that the ground has been graded per the grading plan, and they provide their as-built grading plan to verify that. With this development, since the street's already there, the water and sewer are already there, a grading certificate would not be required because there's no trigger. The improvements are already in place. So that's why we're wanting to add this condition that we still want that grading certificate submitted to us for review so that we can verify the grading's been graded per the approved plan. And so, as Tim Gergen mentioned, they're agreeable to that, and so that would most likely be submitted by their office, by one of their engineers.
Thank you.
Once the developer's going to sell off these lots to a builder, and the builders come in and they have to dig basements, they manipulate the grading on those lots. We have a permit we have an inspector go out and a permit that each builder is required to get, but that's mainly for sediment and erosion control. So to make sure that when it rains, we don't get mud washing off into the street or into neighboring properties. We don't check the grade on every single lot once a builder is building on that property. However, we have the opportunity to work with building and safety and through the building permit phase, work with them to say, hey, let us know once those homes are being built and we can get out there and check the grades and verify that it still meets the grading and drainage plan.
Do you need amendment to this special permit to make sure that gets done?
We can work with building and safety on our own, but if you wish to add that additional condition in there, that there is that check at the building permit stage as well, that's something that could be added.
Okay.
I don't know, building and safety may want to be consulted first to make sure they're okay with that condition as well.
Okay.
Commissioner Campbell, I'll piggyback off of that. So if I'm a neighbor and I do see maybe something that worries me, that maybe the drainage isn't going well, or I think it's not matching what they submitted, who do I contact and how do I submit my concern?
So that would be submitted to our office through Watershed.
Okay.
I met with Mr. Elfring and he has my contact info as well as our inspector's contact info, and told them, hey, we can't be out there throughout the whole duration of construction, and if they see anything, let us know and we can get out there and go through our enforcement mechanisms.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay. We've got the recourse and the certificate question answered. Any other questions for staff? Thank you. Jacob?
Thank you.
Tim?
just clarify a few things that, for the neighbors. Speed may be of the essence on some projects. This project may have, for 9 lots, may be the slowest project I've been involved with. We had a neighbor meeting on April 29th. We had the application on May 14th. Usually a typical delay is a 2-week delay at Planning Commission. We agreed to a 4-week delay to let this get further developed, and we're here ready to see action today to move forward. This is just the first step of many. So we do have to do the grading. We have to do grading certificate. A final plat takes 3 to 4 months to get through that. We're then now looking in October, and we may have missed the 2025 construction season. So speed is a snail's pace on this particular project on that end. The approval to get dirt, so how the process works is, in order for us to get city approval to move dirt, we need to have the special permit approved. So we need to essentially have this special permit approved. We have that approval then to follow the grading drainage. Then we issue the grading plans, and then we do the grading certificate. So it's really not able for us to grade the project first and then come back for your approval. Essentially, we need this approval so that our grading and drainage plan can be accepted by the city on that.
Commissioner?
Tim, in that gentleman's list that was sent to Highmark, it asked for a 4-foot berm. Can you locate on the map for me where they were asking for that?
I'm not quite sure on the 4-foot berm, but in order to do a 4-foot berm, just semantics, for a mowable slope, it's a 3-to-1.
Right.
So you have 12 foot on one side, then you're coming back 12 foot on the other. Then you have a mower strip, like a 4-foot wide. So you're almost a 30-foot wide area to create that berm. I've reviewed that letter. I don't know if a berm, especially in an area where we have low-lying area or drainage concerns, would be advisable in this location. I do understand the need for privacy. Landscaping, either tall grasses or trees, would definitely be acceptable to Newmark in that area. But I don't think a berm would be recommended in that. You might only be able to get a 1-foot tall berm, and it's not really worthwhile then at that point.
Have you consulted with the Newmark owners as to addressing those 12 concerns?
We met briefly again. I just saw this Monday night, and so we quickly reviewed this on Tuesday. The concessions were new homes will be single story and roof heights will be in accordance with the special permit. So I don't know if we want to restrict our builder heights for 1-story or 2-story, but our roof heights will not be any taller than what is allowed by zoning code. So whether it's 1-story or 2-story, our roof heights won't be any taller than what's allowed per the zoning code. And I think with that, number one, we can live with that concession. A lot of these other concessions deal with the grading and drainage plan that Tim Zock and I have worked on, and we're okay with certifying that and working and having all the drainage drained to the streets. And again, erosion control measures. So yes, we will install erosion control measures. That's requirement of part of our process for the grading certificate. And with the builder, the building department has an erosion control part of their permit. I showed you earlier where we would agree to the paved cart path, and that was in where that drainage concern is at. We talked about number 5 about the berm, but we are willing to do the landscaping.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, we talked about concession 5 is not advisable on the berm, but we would be willing to do any sort of landscaping. And then number 6 is a retaining wall built on a neighbor's property, an abutting property, and that one we don't feel comfortable with for liability issues. It's an existing drainage problem. We don't want to add improvements to an abutting neighbor onto someone else's property. We would rather just have that neighbor work on that, anything they need to do on their own property as their own. Thank you, Steve. As their own improvements on that end. And yes, we agree to remove any unused cart paths and backfill and reseed any of those. And we're okay by replanting a tree that was planted by a neighbor. We just don't, you know, Dick, as well as I do, is replanting trees. It's always an iffy. We'll replant it. We just don't want to guarantee the life of that tree, if it survives or not. And then the conveyance of part of the outlot, we're open to that. Again, that is probably adds more discussion than what we need to have with the neighbors as far as what part of the outlot. They want it deeded at no cost to them. There's always a cost when it comes to deed. The property itself, the Newmark owners are willing to deed that property. The property itself value is valueless of $0, but the cost to deed it over and amend their association, because that's going to include property into the association, they'll have to revise their covenants. That would be cost borne, or at least split equally on that by the association. And I don't believe those fees are insurmountable. They're probably small fees. Any trees that are not inside the limits of construction, we don't plan to touch, and we plan to keep all the existing trees. And agreed to maintain the golf course property, and agreed to issue a best guess of construction schedule. We're trying to get the lots on the inventory as soon as possible.
Thanks, that helps there. One other question, obviously, when it can be graded, as you've shown on your map, but then when they go in and dig the basement on that property, the builders have a tendency to want to spread that soil on the lot.
They do.
Is there any way to place any covenants on their development of the lot that the grading that you have set up cannot be changed, and that extra soil needs to be hauled away?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that would be similar to what Tim said as well, is that's a kind of a division of building and safety, is if there is a concern after the home is mostly built, and if they see that's not built to the grading and drainage plan, that anyone has the right to call the watershed department or building and safety, and an inspection will be made, and they can then visually see if the drainage patterns are still being kept the same as per the approved plans that we're trying to get here today.
When Newmark sells those lots, would they be willing to put that in as a condition that the grading needs to remain as shown on the?
Yeah, that's not an issue, Dick.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Good. Any other questions? Thank you, Tim.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I would move that we close the public hearing.
Second, Edens?
Shelley?
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Eber,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Public hearing closed.
And would move that we approve special permit
Dick.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We have made it past the discussion from the audience and the public, so we are continuing on, and we've asked the staff questions, and we've allowed the applicant to also address the concerns. So we will be moving on with our motion and our discussion as the Planning Commission. Thank you, though.
I would move to approve special permit 1423M with the noted conditions and grading plan.
Second, Edens?
But I think they've done a good job of coming back. Before that, where now is the detention cell, that was clear at the top of the hill. And they're lowering that and moving the water to the to the south in that situation, which will eliminate that water going down past the previously constructed townhomes, and hopefully would even reduce some of the water that's going behind them because of those lots sloping to the street and keeping any of that water that previously was golf course and such from heading down towards the townhomes. So I applaud them for the work they've done on it, and working with watershed management And I will be supporting this motion.
Just to clarify, when you say with noted conditions, we're only talking about what's in the staff report and the
That's
updated
correct.
staff report. Okay.
Yeah,
That's why I hesitated.
yeah,
Like, which conditions do you
Yeah.
mean?
yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
let's just clarify that real quick. That does include the plan certification
That's correct.
requirement that building safety can then go back and look at
That's
when they're
correct.
approving.
That's correct.
Okay, excellent, good question.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yes.
I appreciate Olson and your ability to navigate both the neighbors' concerns and the developer, and working through even that list of 12 things and kind of going through it one by one here today. So I really appreciate. I think the neighbors continue to communicate, right? Communication is really important. So just continue to communicate with the developer and with Olson and watershed management, just to make sure that you're seeing the things that were promised today.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments? Okay. It was a great job. Thank you for taking that 4-week deferral, Tim and your group. And we appreciate all of the efforts, and I commend all the commissioners for their comments too also today. Let's go ahead and call our vote, Shelley.
Campbell.
Yes,
Cruz.
Yes.
Ebert.
Yes.
Edens.
Yes.
Fight.
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Motion approved, 6-0.
Okay. We will be moving on to our next public hearing.
Okay, item 5.1, miscellaneous 25007, which is a request for reasonable accommodation under the Fair Housing Act and Chapter 1.28 of the Lincoln Municipal Code to the zoning code definition of family to allow 9 unrelated persons to reside together as a family on property generally located at 6010 South 81st Street. Is there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on this application?
I do want to make a note, Shelley, that all of the planning commissioners has had an opportunity to speak with the city attorney's office. Any other conversations? Okay, thank you.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting any of the site to be disclosed?
No, there are not.
Good afternoon, Planning Commissioners. David Carey, Director of the Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street. We'll go through, generally speaking, go through the staff report and make sure that we highlight the main points to be had and what's in the staff report. And then we'll certainly have the applicant provide information about the proposal that they have applied for, and then proceed with public hearing. So miscellaneous 25007, this is a request for reasonable accommodation under Chapter 1.28 of the Lincoln Municipal Code, the Nebraska Fair Housing Act, and the Federal Fair Housing Act. It's important to note that this request is to make an accommodation to the definition of family as provided in Chapter 27 of the Lincoln Municipal Code to include 9 unrelated individuals with disabilities to reside in a dwelling known as Oxford House at Hannah Point at 6010 South 81st Street. I will just locate that with our map here so that we all have our bearings on where this is located. So we have South 81st Street here. This is Hannah Point Place. This is the property under consideration. This is Lincoln Christian School site to the east. And then also to more generally identify this, this is in the square mile of O'Chaney Road, Pine Lake Road, 84th Street, 70th Street, and it's in the northeast quadrant of that square mile. The basis of this request is that the Fair Housing Act requires the city to make reasonable accommodations to zoning code when the requested accommodation will ensure equal opportunity to individuals with disabilities to live in the neighborhood they choose. Going through the facts of the case and the staff report, this request for Oxford House, this is a single-family detached house. It's zoned in R3. The applicant is seeking accommodation to the definition of family, include up to 9 residents with disabilities at this location. The applicant, again, will have their opportunity to describe the proposal, asserts that the Oxford House concept provides an opportunity for recovering alcoholics and addicts to maintain their sobriety in a supportive living environment that does not require the provision of any services or treatment. Another very important point to be made here is that under the Fair Housing Act, it is unlawful to discriminate in the scale of rental or otherwise make unavailable or deny a dwelling to a buyer or renter because of a disability. And it is well established that individuals recovering from drug or alcohol addiction are disabled under the Fair Housing Act. So as we get into this a little bit further, I want to make some clarifying statements here. Item 9 in the staff report under the facts, want to make sure that it's clear that our Lincoln Municipal Code does have a collaborative living facility as a use that is allowed under certain conditions. And that collaborative living facility is a structure in which not less than 3 persons unrelated by blood, marriage, or adoption reside for the purpose of accommodating their shared disability. Under those conditions of approval, a collaborative living facility could be approved by right if it was only asking for 4 unrelated persons. So that's just how the rules are set up for this zoning district of R3. I will make the point here that the requested accommodation could be granted under the collaborative living facility. So the request for accommodations could be offered and allowed under a collaborative living facility. The applicant at the moment is requesting it under the definition of family. So there are 2 tracks there, but that's just so there's clarity for those watching and in attendance as well as for ourselves. I will be very clear that this facility does not qualify under the definition of a group home nor under transitional living facility. So just kind of like checking the boxes as we go through what our own code has in it for these types of group living facilities. The Lincoln Municipal Code in Chapter 1.28 does provide a process for a person with a disability or entity on their behalf to request the City Council make reasonable accommodation to laws such as building codes, fire or safety codes, or zoning code. So as a zoning code item, the Planning Commission is the reviewing authority. That's why it's in front of you today, but being clear that the City Council does have final action on this item. Section 13 under the facts of the proposal, a lot of information there. I'm going to walk through them fairly quickly just so everybody kind of hears how these factors for reasonable accommodation are considered and kind of where we're at with the facts. Item 1 under 13, whether the housing which is the subject of the request will be used by an individual or a group of individuals considered disabled or handicapped. The residents of the house assert that they are in recovery from addiction of alcohol and other substances and therefore are disabled under the Fair Housing Act. Item 2, this is where it gets into the financially, therapeutically, otherwise necessary to make specific housing available to the individual or group of individuals with a disability or handicap under the Fair Housing Act. The applicants described that the necessity of the communal sober living in this application material. So they've stated that is the purpose behind this. Whether or not there's alternative reasonable accommodation available and would provide an equivalent level of benefit. The use of the property as a collaborative living facility with an accommodation for the 9 residents to occupy the property could provide the equivalent level of benefit. So again, getting back to there is an option here if it's proposed or recommended by this body. And then also whether the alternative accommodations would be suitable based on the circumstances of the particular case. And again, by right, the applicant appears to meet the conditions required to use the property as collaborative living facility with a maximum occupancy of 4 residents. The City Council ultimately could grant an alternative accommodation for 9 residents under collaborative living facility. 5 is talking about whether the requested reasonable accommodation would be consistent with the comprehensive plan and land use designation of the property, which is the subject of the reasonable accommodation request. The comprehensive plan designates this area as urban residential. The comprehensive plan encourages a variety of housing types in the neighborhood, so generally speaking, we would agree with that statement as well. 6 is whether the requested reasonable accommodation substantially affects the physical attributes of the property. The applicant has noted that there are no changes proposed, but this doesn't limit the ability to change the house on the property, but at this time it is not being proposed to be changed. And 7, whether the requested reasonable accommodation would impose an undue financial or administrative burden on the city. Activity at this address was reviewed by the Lincoln Police Department. LPD noted that there have been 18 calls for service since 2022 to this address. It's important to note that there were 5 additional addresses within 1 block radius of this subject property that also had 7 or more calls for service in the same time period. Those are just the facts. We do have representation from LPD here to describe that if needed or recommended. And then finally, the number 8, whether the requested reasonable accommodation would require a fundamental alteration to the zoning, building, fire, or safety codes of the city. Really, the finding here is that under R3, if this were to be collaborative living as a designated use, there would be a 1,000-foot separation requirement in the R3 zoning district. To our knowledge, there are no other collaborative living facilities in this area, so the finding there is that there would not be an undue impact on the neighborhood under those rules that are under collaborative living. So just as a perspective of how we have looked at that. So obviously there's quite a bit of information there, but wanted to kind of walk through that. Those are the highlights. I'm available for any questions if you have them at this time.
Okay. You want to start, Commissioner?
Would there need to be a motion made to amend the request from family living to collaborative living?
I think whatever motion you would make, we'd want that motion to be clear about what the requested action means. So you can make a motion on the definition of family or on collaborative living or not, but that we want to make sure that you're being clear about what that motion is saying.
Okay. Any other questions?
I guess more clarifying for everyone listening in here, it's today whatever happens here is a recommendation to the city council.
Correct.
No final action. The city council makes the final action.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments, questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, testimony from the applicant, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Falson. I'm an attorney at Rembolt Lutti. I, along with my colleague Nicole Miller, represent the applicant, which is Oxford House and Oxford House Hannah Point in this particular matter. I won't plow ground that the director kindly went over to give some background on this, but just a couple points I would add in addition. Oxford houses are democratically self-run and financially self-supporting by the residents. The 9 or so females who live in this particular residence all are fully gainfully employed, and they pay all the costs and expenses related to that house and living expenses. I should also note that in 2022, the Planning Commission and the City Council of Lincoln approved a similar reasonable accommodation request submitted by Oxford House Lioncrest for a property located at 1923 B Street. As is noted in the very comprehensive staff report, I just want to know a few things. It is not disputed that the residents of this particular Oxford House are all disabled for purposes of the Federal Fair Housing Act. 2, the application demonstrates the necessity of communal sober living. 3, granting the reasonable accommodation request comports with the comp plan. And finally, permitting 9 or so individuals to reside at this location would not exceed building code requirements. There are 2 points I want to make before I ask Dan Hahn, who is a regional manager for Oxford House, to come up, and he was going to have a little more knowledge, actually a lot more knowledge on day-to-day of Oxford House. He's also a success story. He currently lives in an Oxford House. Also joining him today, but will be available just if there are additional questions, is Jackie Alba, who is an outreach coordinator for Oxford House here in the state of Nebraska. Here are the 2 points I want to get to. First, our client is amenable and would agree to the staff's recommendation of designating this as a collaborative living facility with a reasonable accommodation of up to 8 unrelated persons to reside in this location for purposes of accommodating their shared disability. Why 8? Again, we want to work with folks. We understand there's been concern that there's been 9 there. Some of our other locations have been larger occupancy, but we think 8 seems to be reasonable. But it's kind of the magic number that we need to get to from a therapeutic standpoint for them to be able to support each other in their recovery. Second, with respect to the pre-submitted public comments, many of which were anonymous, and calls to this address, as was mentioned by the Lincoln Police Department, I want to note the following. It is the female residents of this particular location who have endured significant harassment since moving in there, including the use of a drone to fly solitary, standing alone outside their bedroom and bathroom windows, causing them to have to black out their properties. It is the residents of this Oxford House who have endured multiple police calls which simply had no merit as a method of harassment. It is the female residents of this Oxford House that just this past week had their cable cut, and Spectrum informed that it was clear that it was vandalism, that someone had cut it. So again, it's not the residents of this house that perhaps are causing trouble, and they want to be good neighbors. They want to be invisible and just live their lives. And when Mr. Hahn comes up, he's also going to talk about additional accommodation we're going to make and have already made relative to address some of the parking concerns. Again, the public comments are unfortunate and are based upon hyperbole and misinformation, but we want to be good neighbors and stress that we're willing to work with you and staff as well as the city council to make sure that in fact occurs. With that, if I could, I would ask Mr. Hahn to come up and speak for a little bit and also be able to answer any questions you may have.
Shelley, did you get the address?
1923
Okay,
B
thank
Street.
you. Just making sure.
Oh, okay.
No, the address for Mark Folsom.
Oh.
You're good. Could you
I
give
don't,
your
I don't
address
think you
just
gave me
real
our
quick?
address.
28 Lincoln Mall, Suite 300 Lincoln.
Right.
Thank you.
Didn't want to interrupt your discussion, but I just wanted to make sure we added that. And if you could do the same with your name and address.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Hahn. 1401 Pioneer Road, Ponca City, Oklahoma, 74604.
Thank you.
So I want to just tell you a little bit about Oxford House overall. I'll try to be quick with this. We were founded in 1975. We are an evidence-based practice. You can go online and find extensive stuff about us. Research through DePaul University, 2018 Surgeon General's report, on and on and on. I mean, you could spend days in there. And then YouTube, we were featured on 60 Minutes in 1992, Meredith Vieira again later on. We have over 4,000 houses across the nation. But I'm going to talk specifically about what I can answer because I don't want to throw anything out there that you may ask I can't answer. I am a success story. I make it to the 18th of this month. I'll have 18 years of sobriety. I've given my life to this organization, and so have the people that we care. And that's what I can tell you. I stand before you today at Oxford House's presence in Nebraska is centered around the Department of Health and Human Services. They've seen the need for sober living in Nebraska, and it has been quite rapid. We have grown from 38 houses 7 or 8 years ago to where we'll have our 100th house across the state this year. There's a tremendous need in the state of Nebraska, not only with the opioid epidemic, but alcohol and other substances, as well as the safe housing being a part of that. So my role, I live in Oklahoma, and I'm supervise 8 staff in the state of Oklahoma. I supervise 3 staff in the state of Missouri, and I supervise the 5 staff here in Nebraska. My role, it would take me the rest of the afternoon to tell you everything that I do, but I provide accountability to Department of Health and Human Services about who we're serving, the Nebraskans that we're helping. But at the end of the day, our right to exist in neighborhoods as a single family and be accountable to what that means. So Nebraska we're helping a lot of citizens across the state. We want to just live in that home and enjoy it as a single family and hope to do so. So some things that, I really don't have a whole lot because most of the I want to give you guys an opportunity to ask me questions. But as was said, one of the things that we're looking at immediately with that house, because it is some hardship there. When we opened that house, I never dreamed in a million years that we would exceed the number of parking space allotted, and there has been a time or two that we may have done so. So we are limiting from this day forward the number of cars that are to be able to park. So the women that live there will be immediately parking in the driveway or directly in front of the house and nothing outside that. And the house, on its own accord, has stepped up and decided that they're going to provide professional contracted lawn care to the home itself. I don't have a whole lot more than that, and I do open it up to any questions that you may have.
Escaped. I had it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
Yes.
So in this facility, you have 8 women, 8, 9, the number. Do they have overnight guests? Is that allowed? How does that work?
Okay. The only situation with as far as support staff or the other servant leaders that support the houses, if the house was accommodating to women and children, which this house is not, it would be an absolute no. It's a house decision with it not being a women and children's home.
So they can have house.
Yes.
Cousin Benny comes from out of town, can spend the night with them.
And I do know that what I can tell you is that the house, there's women that have lived there for a while, okay, and they want this to go away. You know, some of those women in that house feel that they're living under siege. So I think I don't have any ability to control what they do in there as long as they're, that the requirements of the home is that you pay your equal share, okay? That you vote as a group on how you spend the house money, and that you evict anyone that uses or drinks immediately. Outside that, now if they were to allow overnights and say that were a children's house, we could intervene and say, no, that can't happen. But in this case, they have a right to decide that, and I do know that the house at this moment is trying to scale that back, but they don't have a policy per se on that. It's up to the house. So, and Oxford House as a whole doesn't have consistent policies throughout each house. As long as that house is following the conditions of what it takes to be chartered, we're going to allow them to have the freedom to make those decisions based on responsibility. Now, if they start heading off track, we have abilities. That's why the staff are here, to go in and assist them. I hope that answers your question.
Okay. Yes.
You mentioned part of your job is accountability to like DHHS. What does that accountability look like?
Okay, so SAMHSA, which is a government organization that is the government organization that represents recovery. Okay, in general, recovery dollars are put out from that. We are accountable as an evidence-based practice and a proven resource. My accountability to DHHS is just reporting what they ask as far as their entire role with us is help as many people as you can. You know, they just and do it ethically in the right way. And we have proven that here in Nebraska that we're doing so. So, you know, what I require to them, it varies, but usually it's just centered around demographics of who's in the home, what their primary substance of use was, just general data things, stuff like that. If that answers your question.
Good. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'll ask one more.
Yes, okay. Commissioner?
So regarding, it's very sad to hear what's been happening to the ladies. Anyway, that's terrible. What kind of accountability do they have? I mean, they govern each other.
Mm-hmm.
When governing each other maybe doesn't work,
Right.
or something is off with somebody, or there is a safety concern or something. How does Oxford House handle that situation?
Okay, so that's a really good question. Well, you're going to get into how we work really effectively here.
I read through the website.
So
It's very good.
I'll just tell you this. There's 96 houses, I believe, in Nebraska right now, and the rents in those homes to the landlords vary somewhere between $1,900 and $3,800 a month. Okay. All those houses are current on their rent with their landlords. Everyone across the state. Well, how in the heck can that be? Because it really doesn't. It's hard for the general public to believe. But if you research peer recovery, it's one of the most proven and effective methods. So we're encouraging, and you're asking about oversight. So when a house opens, they apply for what's called a conditional charter to be a chartered Oxford house. And on that charter, it says the three things I just mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. Must be financially self-supporting, must operate democratically, and financially self-supporting means pay all your bills on time and in full. So us as staff, if there's a bill missed, there's some oversight, right? And that can be a variety of things. But most importantly, we are a member-run organization. And you know, my proof to that is there's 5 staff in this state currently in 97 houses. So the members are taking care of themselves. Okay, this wouldn't happen. It's peer not only in the home but outside. So that house belongs. Is it chapter 2, Jackie? 5. Chapter 5, because we've expanded. So that particular house belongs to Chapter 5. And what that means is that once a month, the presidents from all the houses in Chapter 5 meet together. Okay. The house is required to bring some accountability information to there to show that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So that has been a challenge too, because we have tried to keep the traffic down in that house, right? But we have people that we trust, that we know, and they're involved at the chapter level. So if a house goes astray, the chapter has the ability to go in and correct it. That house has been there for 3 years, and there's been no need for that. So, we do watch over it, and we do take it very seriously about being in these neighborhoods. And that's, and like I say, if you have more questions about that, you can go online, and it explains our whole model. Our manuals are there, everything about how we work. What we try to do is work ourselves out of a job. We want these members to do it themselves. And that's where the recovery's at. I mean, that's how I got here.
So you just mentioned a moment ago about if there's a problem, that there's potentially an intervention at the chapter level.
Mm-hmm.
We're self-policing, self-governing, so to speak. Each house is its own little fiefdom, I guess, its own little. And in this case, we do have a women's only home.
Mm-hmm.
My concern is if things are not floated up to that chapter level, what's the kind of accountability at that house level that needs to be happening?
The chapter knows the condition of the house. Always.
From the peer that is
There's people
managing.
that they're keeping an eye. So our chapters are generally a small, that anywhere from, well, according to our literature, but we usually try to do anywhere between 6 and 12 houses. Okay. If you knew the committees that are involved within that chapter, it'd take me all day to tell you. We have a housing service committee, and their sole role is exactly what you're talking about. Okay. And they're elected by their peers, and they meet regularly to make sure everything's going as it is. I mean, it would take me all day to explain it to you. They're self-sufficient from top to bottom. We're having our world convention here in a few months, and there's 60 members from Nebraska going to DC, and they paid for it all themselves. They do fundraisers. It's a community. Not just each house is a part of something bigger. And it's a really wonderful program, and I would just encourage you to go online to learn more, because it would take me forever to explain it. We are some busy folks. We do a lot. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Bet.
Anything else for me? Otherwise, I'll be available for questions at any point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Now we are moving on to our testimonies from, let's have our testimony in support. Testimony in a neutral position. Testimony in opposition. Okay. We will move to staff questions then. Okay, thank you. Commissioner.
David, I was told that Captain Kupsa would be here.
Yeah, he
from
was.
the police department. Is he available?
Want to see if he's maybe out in the hallway? He was here earlier. I don't know. He might have been called on something, but.
And I believe his name is pronounced Kopsa.
Yes. Kopsa?
Yep.
Thank you.
He'll give you the whole
There
enunciation.
we go. Saved by the LPD.
Yay! Commissioner.
Captain Kopsa.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Can you give us a background on what the 18 calls to the residents were, and if there were any results of those calls?
Yes, thank you for all you do, commissioners, to keep our community moving in the right direction. Captain Kopsa, Lincoln Police Department. I'm the Southeast Team Captain, and police station's right next door, 575 South 10th Street. Yeah, so those calls that were reported to you, they came from a radius of about 750 feet, and they went back all the way to January of 2022. And so I looked at, there were a total of 114 calls within that radius. I looked at all of those calls and then specifically went through the calls that were attributed at the 6010 address. So do you want me to just go through kind of what calls were at the 6010 address? Is that what you're asking?
Please, and if there was any results or actions taken thereafter?
Yeah, so generally there were 7 parking calls out at that address, and then 4 disturbance or trespassing type calls at that address, and then 8 other calls. The disturbances ranged from 3 females yelling outside of the residence on June 8th of 2022, a trespassing call where the residents themselves were calling, saying that there was a person there that was refusing to leave. We made it out there and spoke with him, and it was a male, and he ended up walking away, so there was no arrest or anything needed there. There was another one where the residents themselves called in because somebody that had formerly been a resident there was refusing to leave. We got that sorted out without any arrests made. There was an assault reported from the residents. No arrests were made. There was somebody reported as missing from the residents. That person was found very quickly and had actually, I believe, transferred to another facility. There was an accident that was reported that had actually occurred at a different location, and somebody had run into one of the residents' cars at another location, so they reported it from their residence. A neglect report and a report of residents saying that neighbors had pointed cameras at their address. So we went out and sort of mediated that between the neighbors. And then somebody reported their window was broken in their vehicle outside, and somebody's car slid into one of the residents' cars under icy conditions. So as far as arrests go, no arrests were made. I didn't drill down into the parking to see if we issued parking tickets, but no criminal arrests.
Well, and basically what I'm hearing is that several of the calls came from the residence itself.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions for staff? Okay.
Since the police are up here,
Thank you. Commissioner.
aside from the reasonable accommodation of this house, if a house is unruly and you get numerous phone calls, not this particular house, those calls don't sound unruly to me, but if there is there a way that the police can be involved after so many calls of it being listed as an unruly property?
Yeah, so typically if we have an address that we're getting a lot of calls at, if there's house parties or just other disturbances, assaults, criminal activity that's stemming from one address, we'll work with the property owner. Usually there's something that they can do to address the situation. And if not, then we can move on to issuing citations to property owners for maintaining a disorderly house. And so that is one of the things that we do from time to time, but it's infrequent.
And none of that has happened on this property?
No,
Thank you.
hasn't.
I will ask one more.
Yes, Commissioner.
I don't know if this is the right two people to ask this of, but it does concern me that these women may not feel safe because of neighbors. So I don't know if there's anything city or county ever has to support neighbors in remediation or just to help each other understand each other. It just sounds like there's some combative feelings, and I didn't know if there are anything that we as a city or county can help navigate that for them.
Nothing that I know of formally. I know that when we go out and take these calls, such as the cameras being pointed at the residents, our officers are really trying to mediate that
Right.
and come to a conclusion. Normally, people don't just set up cameras on random houses. There's something that generated their angst about the property. They've taken this action, so we're going into it trying to mediate, trying to keep the peace, get to a place where we can have a peaceful neighborhood and everybody can live and feel safe there. And so that's our goal, is obviously to enforce any violations, should there be any, but then to also make the neighborhood feel as safe as possible.
And you would recommend, whether it's this house or any house in any neighborhood, that if someone is feeling unsafe or they see something that's off or not going against some laws or anything, just to report that. The more reporting that can happen, the better, so that
Right.
there's some communication.
Yes. We obviously can't patrol every block,
Right.
every minute of every day, so we really rely on people calling us and letting us know where things are happening so that we can address that and then also know where we need to direct our efforts.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we would like to have the applicant rebuttal, please.
We're just available to answer, or at least someone here is available to answer any remaining questions you may have.
Commissioner.
It just, I'm conflicted by a house opening and putting 9 individuals in a house and it taking 3 years before it comes before us, when the codes are very clear on Lincoln's standards. Why is that not done before the house is even occupied?
I don't know the answer to that, and I don't want to give a legal opinion. I'll leave that up to your city council. But to the extent the Federal Fair Housing Act actually preempts local laws in this particular area, it is a question whether we have to jump through this process anyway, but we're doing so, again, seeking a reasonable accommodation. As far as what the protocols are specific to Oxford House when they seek these, could you come up and address that? If that's okay with you.
Sure.
Excellent, thank you.
So again, Mark, no, what
Yeah, I want to know why, if we've been in there 3 years, why is this now just?
So when we typically, I would tie it up to what he said. We go into it with the knowledge of where what we're classified as when we go to open a home. Okay, so we look at it. I mean, that's the last thing, and I've been involved. This is in 17 years. This is the 3rd hearing that I've been to, and the other two that I've been at were before the house. I mean, it had just opened, so it was being addressed by the city as it happened. This is the first time that I've been to one, that I've been to a hearing personally where it's been open this amount of time. I don't want to say it with any arrogance, because we do want to be a good neighbor, but we go into the situation, we want to get the house open, and normally, because, for me to stand up here and say sober peer-run living is perfect, it's not. But, I mean, compared to most other houses, I mean, I think that there's less drinking going on at our house than there is up and down the block. I mean, that's just kind of the way we look at it. So we just go in and get a house open, and most of the time we don't hear anything. In this case, I have no knowledge as to why, but I know that we did not hear anything. The first time that somebody came by the house, what was it, a year ago? About a year? Someone came by, and it's just taken that long to get to this point. I don't want to say it with any arrogance, but we just opened the house because of where we were classified.
Let me focus a little bit. So, for example, in other cities, other states, do you get that approval process in advance before moving folks in?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, and that's never have I been a part of that. So, that answer the question?
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anything else that you'd like to add before we close applicant rebuttal?
No, but just would be available for any additional questions.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I would move that we close the public hearing.
Second, Edens?
Shelley?
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Public hearing closed.
And I'm not sure if I should say this is an amended motion.
Or just a motion?
Just a motion.
Not knowing what exactly you're going to say, I think you can make a motion
Okay.
on its own merits.
All right. My motion would be to approve miscellaneous 25007, a request for reasonable accommodation under the Fair Housing Act and Chapter 128 of Lincoln Municipal Code to the zoning code definition of collaborative living to allow 8 unrelated persons to reside as a family on the property generally located at 6010 South 81st Street.
I will second that. Edens?
Thank you. Okay, now we have a motion. Let's go ahead and discuss it. Dick, Commissioner?
My reason, I mean, with all the letters that we got, the emails that we got and everything else, I've gotten a clearer picture of some of the opposition, and having Officer Copsa indicate what those calls were for, many of them were from the house itself. And so I question if we don't have a neighborhood that's just kind of not got they haven't met these people, haven't gotten their act together of being neighborly. And it sounds like that, yeah, there may have been 3 women outside shouting at each other one day, but I don't know that hasn't happened in any of our families' households at one time or another of the kids having an argument. But I do believe that supervised living environment is better, but that's not how this operation operates. And they've been successful across the country, and so I will be voting for it.
Commissioner?
I think the law is pretty clear that reasonable accommodation, you can request one. It doesn't say when, doesn't say how. It just says you can request cities to amend or bend their zoning. And I appreciate them coming down to 8. It's a 6-bedroom house. I don't think we've seen some where they're really backing them in, and that bothers me. I think this is a nice neighborhood. If you divide that mortgage by 8 people, you're getting it down to a reasonable amount. So financially, it checks the box. And I think it fits within the law on what a reasonable accommodation is supposed to do for people with disabilities. And I will always be a champion for people with disability, and the law says people in recovery qualify.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with my fellow commissioners. I appreciate you coming today and bringing up the parking comments and the concern for parking and trying to find a solution for that. Same with the lawn care. So I really appreciate you trying to be good neighbors, just like you said. And that's what it sounds like. I appreciate that these women are trying to improve their lives and continue to be neighborly as best they can. And I do hope the neighbors can be neighborly and figure out how to live nicely together.
Okay. We do appreciate everything that we've heard today. I agree with my fellow commissioners, and I'll be supporting this motion. Shelley?
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Motion approved, 6-0.
At this time, anyone wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda may do so. Seeing none?
I would move that we adjourn.
Second, Edens.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.